Today, we're going deep on a topic. Pretty, pretty fascinating, I think. It's love. And I'm not talking about the love you have for pizza or for a good book, though I definitely have those loves too. But we're going all in on romantic love. Is it this eternal thing, magic? Or is it, and this is where it gets kind of heavy, is it just an illusion? We've got a stack of research here. Academic papers about what love does to your brain, even some classic literature. Got to have Romeo and Juliet in the mix, right?
Well, I think you bringing up the brain is really the right place to start. A lot of folks think of love as this purely emotional thing, but the research, the science, it's pointing to some really interesting things going on, biologically speaking, in our brains.
Okay, so break it down. What is actually happening up there? When we fall for someone, head over heels.
So there are a bunch of areas that just light up, like literally show more activity when we're in love. One of them is this area called the caudate nucleus. Think of it like your brain's reward center. It's going crazy when we experience pleasure, good food, music, and it turns out, yeah, when we see someone we're super attracted to.
So, our brain's giving us a little prize for falling in love. I could definitely relate to that, that euphoric feeling.
Yeah.
But how does that make love an illusion?
Here's the twist. So yeah, that activity in the reward center, it makes love feel amazing, no doubt. But it also kind of hints at why we end up doing some pretty irrational stuff when we're in love. There's even a term for it, the irrationality of love. One of the papers dives into this. It's like the feelings are so intense, they kind of cloud our judgment, and we start prioritizing the relationship above everything else, even sometimes our own well-being.
Hold up, so you're saying falling in love could be bad for us,
Yeah.
actually work against our best interests.
In some cases, yeah. And I know everyone brings this up, but it fits. Romeo and Juliet, I mean, their love was intense, passionate, no question. But those same feelings drove them to make, let's be honest, some pretty reckless choices.
Yeah, okay, I see your point. But, I mean, isn't that passion part of what makes love so powerful, so, I don't know, captivating?
Absolutely, there's that side to it. But we got to look deeper, right? Beyond those surface feelings, are these intense emotions really the best foundation for, I don't know, a lifelong bond, a truly fulfilling relationship? And this brings us to everyone's favorite, dopamine.
Ah, yeah, the love hormone. Everyone's always going on about dopamine going wild when you're in love.
Right. But here's the catch, and this is where things get a little unsettling maybe. We don't actually have that much research on how much dopamine is actually released when we're, in those romantic moments. A lot of studies, they look at brain activity, which areas light up, but not directly measuring the dopamine itself.
So are we, jumping the gun on how important dopamine is to love?
It's possible, and if we don't totally get the mechanics of it, how much of what we're calling love is actually just our own, I don't know, projections or stuff we've picked up from our culture. That's where this whole love is an illusion idea starts to make sense.
Okay, I'm starting to see the layers here. So we feel these intense things, no doubt, and we label it love. But the actual stuff happening in our brains might be way more complicated than we realize.
Exactly. And to make it even more complex, there's culture right. There's a paper that argues, the West, we put romantic love on this pedestal. It sets up these expectations that, let's be honest, aren't always realistic.
Yeah, that makes sense. Everywhere you look, it's perfect couples, fairy tale romances, movies, music, books, you name it.
And it makes you think love should always be easy, effortless. But that's just not how it works.
So other cultures, different parts of the world, they view this whole romantic love thing differently?
That's where the poetry comes in. We've got Li Qingzhao. She's a Chinese poet, Song Dynasty. Her work, it's all about the joys and sorrows of love, really similar to Sappho's poetry, ancient Greece.
So this intense, passionate love, it's not just some modern Western thing?
Not at all. These poems, they prove people have been feeling this stuff for centuries, across cultures. But the way they express it, the expectations around relationships, that's where the differences come in.
Okay, so love, or how we experience it at least, it's this mix of biology and culture. But how does this actually play out in, I don't know, real relationships?
Well, there's this paper, it dives into how romantic love can lead to something called motivated reasoning. It's like our desires, our biases, they actually change how we process information, especially about, you guessed it, our partners.
Gotcha. So can you give an example? What would that look like?
One of the studies they talk about, it found that people in love, they tend to downplay their partner's bad qualities and exaggerate the good ones.
Oh, man, I've totally seen that. It's like when you're smitten, you put on those rose-colored glasses,
Yeah.
all the red flags. Who cares? Right?
Precisely. And that's where this illusion thing starts to get maybe a little dangerous. This motivated reasoning, it can make us choose things that aren't good for us, even when it's obvious.
So we're basically tricking ourselves into seeing what we want to see, ignoring reality.
Kind of, yeah. And that self-deception, it can have consequences, big ones, especially when it comes to, I don't know, keeping healthy boundaries and just making smart choices in our relationships.
This is getting intense. Brain chemistry, cultural baggage, self-deception. Is there any hope for real love? Like the kind that lasts, in a world where our brains are basically wired to trick us?
That's the big question, and one we'll definitely keep digging into as we go deeper on this topic. But first, let's talk about another piece of this love illusion puzzle, the idea of limerence. So limerence, it's like that crazy, intense, longing, infatuation, like having a major crush on someone. And get this, it actually has its own like brain chemistry signature.
Wait, so there's specific brain stuff happening when you have a crush? That's wild.
Yeah, right? It's like our brains are built for this whole emotional roller coaster. One of the papers we have, it actually compares limerence to, get this, an addiction.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Addiction? That seems a little extreme, doesn't it?
Maybe it sounds dramatic, but think about it. You obsess over the person. You just got to be around them. And when they're not there, it's like withdrawal. Sound familiar?
Yeah, now that you mention it, those early stages, when you're like totally smitten, it can be all-consuming.
Exactly. And that's where the illusion gets even stronger, more powerful. Limerence, it's like this flood of hormones. Dopamine, norepinephrine, the works, makes you super focused, tons of energy, you feel amazing.
So like a natural high, basically. No wonder it feels so good.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing, that can't last forever. That intensity, it fades, and then you're left wondering, what happened? Where'd the magic go?
Is that why, I don't know, some people just keep jumping from one relationship to the next, chasing that initial rush?
It's possible they're always looking for that limerence high, and it might actually keep them from, really connecting with someone, forming something deeper.
That's kind of sad when you think about it. Trading real intimacy for, I don't know, a quick hit of infatuation.
Yeah, good point. And it makes you wonder if love is so tied to brain chemistry and can lead us to do things that aren't so smart, is the whole, I don't know, monogamy thing. Mutually exclusive relationships. Is that really the best way to do things? The best model for society?
Whoa. Okay, now we're getting into some interesting territory. But honestly, there's a question I've been thinking about this whole time. Like, if love is so tricky, what does that mean for how we do relationships?
It's complicated, no easy answers. But one of the papers, it argues that maybe the traditional way we view love, marriage, all that, maybe it's built on, I don't know, a shaky foundation.
What do you mean?
Like, what if we accept that love, at least part of it, is an illusion? It's our brains and our culture messing with us, then expecting that to stay the same forever, over a lifetime. It's not very realistic.
Right? The whole find the one happily ever after thing that's probably setting us up for a lot of disappointment.
For sure. And those unrealistic expectations, they can lead to people feeling inadequate, guilty, even resentful when the relationship inevitably hits some bumps.
So are you saying we just ditch monogamy?
Not necessarily. It's more about questioning those deep-seated beliefs about love, relationships. Maybe there are other ways to do it. Models that, I don't know, fit better with how we actually are.
Okay, so what would those other models look like?
Some researchers are looking into, like, polyamory, ethical non-monogamy, multiple loving relationships. Everyone knows, everyone consents.
That's definitely a different way to think about things. But wouldn't that be, I don't know, crazy complicated?
It definitely takes work. Communication, honesty, emotional maturity, all that. But for some people, some couples, it can actually be freeing, more fulfilling.
So it's about finding the right structure for the people involved, not sticking to some preset template that society gives us.
Exactly. It's about letting go of those limiting beliefs and creating relationships based on, I don't know, genuine connection, respect, shared values.
This is giving me a lot to think about. But can we, I don't know, shift gears for a second? Let's get practical. If our brains are basically making us act irrationally when we're in love, how do we, I don't know, protect ourselves from making choices we'll regret?
Good question. Really important. One of the papers, it emphasizes self-awareness. Like, knowing our own biases, what makes us vulnerable, that's the first step to making better choices.
So being honest with ourselves about, I don't know, our patterns, the stuff we tend to do.
Yeah. For example, if you know you tend to, I don't know, idealize people when you first start dating them, maybe slow down, get to know them better before you jump into anything serious.
Don't let your brain trick you into thinking it's love and rush into things.
Right, and pay attention to, like, those red flags, the little warning signs, the stuff that might be setting off that motivated reasoning.
Like those little doubts you get
Yeah.
that you try to ignore.
Exactly. Don't ignore those. Could be your intuition trying to tell you something important.
Okay, so self-awareness. Listen to your gut. What else? How do we deal with all this complicated love stuff?
Boundaries. Healthy boundaries. Knowing what you will and won't put up with, and being able to say that clearly, firmly.
That's huge, right? It's about respecting yourself, knowing your worth, even when you're in a relationship.
Absolutely. And setting boundaries, it's not about controlling the other person or like suffocating the relationship. It's about making a space where both people feel safe, respected, so they can thrive.
This is all such good advice. But what about when you're already in a relationship and you start to, I don't know, have doubts? How do you know when it's time to walk away?
That's a tough one. No easy answers. But one of the papers, it says, ask yourself some questions. Like, are you really happy? Do you feel like, the other person respects you, values you? Are you growing as a person?
Those are really good questions to think about. But I mean, sometimes the answers, they might not be what you want to hear.
True. But staying in a relationship that isn't right, that can be way worse in the long run than just admitting it's not working.
So, better to rip off the Band-Aid, face the truth, even if it hurts.
Yeah. And leaving a relationship, it doesn't mean you failed. It could just mean you've changed, you've grown, and what you need, it's different now.
Okay. This has been mind-blowing. We went deep on brain chemistry, culture, all the ways love can go wrong, even some different ways to do relationships.
It's been a wild ride. I hope everyone listening learned something valuable about love and how complicated it is.
Me too.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, what's like the one thing you want people to walk away with? The key message from all this?
I think more than anything, just remember, love is powerful, but it's not always what it looks like. Be curious, be, critical, don't just accept things blindly. And most of all, be kind to yourself and to your partner, whoever that is. It's a confusing journey, this whole love thing, but it's also beautiful.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the illusion of love. We'll see you next time. Keep thinking, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.